Dr. Sills, Dr. Hill, the league is going to give $1 million to two teams of medical researchers to study the impact of cannabis and CBD on pain management. Can you guys give me kind of an overview on how we got to this point where this kind of research is being done, is necessary, and is important?
Well, I can start, Rob. I think first and foremost, we're obviously always interested in trying to improve our approach and our treatment for acute and chronic pain in NFL players. And we always want to make sure that our players are receiving, the most up-to-date medical consensus around any of these treatments. So our burden of proof is really high for NFL players. We anytime we want to introduce a new therapy, we have to understand how that decision might impact their well-being and their performance. So we know there's been a lot of interest in this area, but we did not feel like there was a lot of great, solid research on the benefits of marijuana and CBD and treating acute and chronic pain. So that's why we wanted to try to contribute to the body of science in this area. So we started with what's called an RFI, a request for information, and that was back in February 2021. And we asked the medical scientific community to submit proposals, and I think we got over 150 submissions involving not only CBD and cannabis, but relaxation therapy and acupuncture and biofeedback and counseling approaches and all types of things like that. And so I think we felt like that response to that RFI, suggested that there's really a lot of great work out there. And so we then issued the RFP, which is a request for proposals, back in June, and asked for people to submit, and again, got over 100 proposals. And went through a process, and I'll let Kevin talk about that process, but that's how we got to select these winners. So Kevin, you might want to talk a little bit about the process.
Sure. And as Dr. Sills mentioned, players have been interested, obviously, in cannabis and cannabidiol CBD for a number of years. And so the league and the Players Association have been trying to be responsive to that interest. And the research really is very limited in that area, unfortunately. So it's a situation where the actual use of these products far exceeds the level of evidence, unfortunately. So what we've tried to do throughout this process is to really fill the gaps in the available research in this area. And so the process, as Dr. Sills mentioned, we talked with players, we talked with medical staffs, learned as much as we could about what possible research might advance the science in a way that could be helpful to the players. And then we went through this lengthy process where we initially requested information, received over 100 responses to that I reviewed along with my counterpart from the Players Association, Dr. Jeff Ling. And then we moved forward to a request for proposals again, bombarded with proposals, and we're very excited about that because we had proposals from all over the world from top experts in a variety of areas, not just cannabinoids. So we were not limited to cannabinoids, but I think we wanted to be cognizant of the fact that there was so much interest in that area, and it just so happened that many, as Dr. Sills mentioned, again, probably 80% of the responses had to do with cannabinoids. So after a thorough vetting process, we whittled those responses down to 10, and then the Pain Management Committee, turned the process over to the Research and Innovation Committee, and they went through, again, a rigorous process very similar to what these groups would go through at the National Institutes of Health, and we came away with the two winners, and we're really excited. We're thrilled. These are very polished research programs, one from Canada, University of Regina, the other one from University of California at San Diego. So we're really eager to see what they're going to come up with, because at its core, we really don't know if cannabis or CBD are really helpful for pain and performance, or are they neuroprotective? And so we want to find out some of these answers.
Could you tell me a little bit why you think there may have, or there hasn't been, a lot of research on this topic? Both of you guys mentioned that, and this is something that obviously it seems like it's very important, very necessary at this point. Why hasn't there been? Why hasn't it been done yet?
Yeah, so I deal with this every day, Rob, and so there are a number of reasons. One reason is the scheduling of cannabis makes it harder to do this research, but the main reason, which I think speaks very well of what we're trying to do here, the main reason is that stakeholders really aren't interested in advancing the science, right? You have states and companies that are making a lot of money selling cannabis products, selling CBD products right now. So they don't feel the need to prove the efficacy of these products, and you've got millions of people using them. So that's the predicament that we're in as healthcare professionals or organizations that really care about the health and safety of our constituents, the players in this case. So we really want to know, do they work? And every day I meet with patients who are interested in cannabinoids, and it's the same thing. We really don't know the answers to that. So it becomes a very complicated risk-benefit discussion. So I'm thrilled to be a part of something that actually is going to do something that's going to get toward finding some answers to the questions that everybody's been talking about for years.
Could you guys explain the goals for each of the studies? Because I see that one of the studies is going to focus on sports-related injuries, and the other one is geared more towards pain management from concussions. So are there some differences? What are the goals for each one?
Well, Rob, I think that the goals for each one are to find out whether or not various cannabinoid concentrations are helpful in treating pain primarily. And as you said, the Canadian group is looking at a sample of athletes who have suffered concussions. So they will be testing multiple cannabinoids. So it could be THC alone, could be a combination of THC and cannabidiol, or CBD alone in these populations. And so we're excited about that. As you mentioned, the San Diego group is focused more in athletes who are experiencing injury. Can these products be helpful in treating that pain? And I think the Canadian group is doing a similar thing, but again, in a slightly different population.
I think one other thing I'd add, Rob, just to that is I think that it's important, and as I alluded to earlier, for us in our athlete population, it's not just about the efficacy in treating pain. We also have to consider any impact on performance, because we're talking world-class athletes where anything that diminishes that performance, even by a tiny margin, could be the difference in success and failure. And so, as in anything in medicine, as Dr. Hill mentioned, we're talking about the risk-benefit ratio. So we want something that's beneficial in treating pain, but does not create additional risk for either other injury or decrease of performance. And that's another reason why I think this research hasn't been done, because, treating pain in the general population, very different than treating pain in world-class elite athletes.
What type of impact could you see from this study beyond football?
Well, I think obviously this type of work is going to be of interest to athletes in many different sports and at all levels. We know that all sports, have some degree of injury and pain that are associated with those injuries. And so I think this will be very generalizable. And as Dr. Hill mentioned, these products are already out there, and in many cases, they're being widely used and widely marketed. So, this research, I think, will help inform people as to which strategies may be beneficial and then those that may not be. And so I see this as being hugely impactful for the NFL, for all of elite sport, but also sport at all level across society.
Yeah, I would just add that the design of these studies really takes into consideration all of the strengths and weaknesses of previous studies that have been done. So there have not been a lot of studies, but the studies that have been done, people like me have been poring over for years. And so experts recognize the strengths and the weaknesses of them, including sample sizes, outcome measures, which are very important. So what we've done here is we've been able to work with groups that are experts in this area, and we're very confident that these studies are going to be among the best that have been done in this area. And again, there's a tremendous gap here. So I really feel like with these experts looking at this in a rigorous way, we're going to fill some of those gaps.
What's the timeline, guys, as far as the research and when they come back, and maybe anything that can become useful beyond implementation?
So the studies, this is a 3-year project, but like any grant, we're going to be checking in with them regularly. So probably on a 6-month basis. And so they'll be reporting back. And I feel like having the level of organization in these groups, again, these are polished research groups that have already done work similar to this, and this is not going to be recreating the wheel for them. And so again, the population changes, elite athletes, but I think they're going to be able to generate research that will be generalizable to the public and elite athletes within, a year or two, I would say.
Are there any hopes, expectations that you go into it with, feeling one way that what can come out of it, what you want to see? Obviously, it's a study. You don't know what the research is going to show until the end.
I would just say, Rob, we go into it as scientists, not biased in one way or the other. I think that's the beauty of doing, good quality research, is that you arrive at the correct answer. And so there are no preconceived hypotheses here that we're either trying to prove or disprove. I think that, as Kevin said, there's been an explosion of products that have come into the marketplace, and they have been used for almost every condition under the sun. It's not infrequent that I see billboards advertising use of CBD for just almost every health condition I can think of. And so as physicians and scientists, we really would like to bring a level of precision to that use to find out, is this worthwhile or not? Because if it's not, we need to be exploring other strategies. And if it is useful, then we want to promote it and do it in a way that's appropriate. And I think also remember that a lot of this comes out of the notion that everyone recognizes that opioids are not the answer for treating pain anymore, either in elite athletes or across the population. And thankfully, we've seen the rate of opioid use in the NFL continue to go down over the last few years. And in fact, it's lower than the use of opioids in the general population. We've got good data in our prescription drug registry that shows that fact. So this is, in our mind, it's not a binary conversation of opioids versus CBD. We want to look at a range of other options that are out there, but each of those options, we need to study it in a thoughtful way and make sure, as I said before, that it meets a very high standard, a high burden of proof for use in our population.
I think lastly, what would you say to athletes, players who are their own scientists, who don't want to wait for the research, who decide that this is going to help, whatever it is they choose to do is going to help them at that particular point in time?
Well, I think we recognize, Rob, that every athlete has an incredible interest in and investment in their own body. I mean, that is their business. And so they are incredibly in tune with what helps them to perform in an optimal way. But it's been my experience and our experience in the league, Rob, that when we bring solid scientific evidence, it changes behavior. And I think one perfect example of that is helmet adoption. If you think about the story with helmets, we went from several years ago, 50% of the league wearing what we would now consider to be an underperforming helmet, to last year, only one player in the league who didn't wear the very top performing helmet. And that transformation happened over a couple of years, and it happened because we had the data. So, once we did the research and we're actually able to show players the data that indicated how much safer it was for them to wear certain helmets, we saw that adoption change. And I think the same thing is true here. When we bring data to players and show them how the science actually moves in one direction or another, I think that will change behavior. So, Kevin, you may have some comments on that too.
Yeah, I think this just shows that we take what the players say, their interests, their feedback very seriously. And, they have been interested. We've heard from the teams, from the medical staff, from the players, loud and clear that they're interested in cannabis and cannabinoids. And so we wanted to do something that would advance the science in this area so that we could, as Dr. Sills mentioned, we could have better informed conversations with them. And I also want to emphasize that this is not it. This is the first step here. So the NFL has done great research in other areas, concussions, musculoskeletal injuries, et cetera. And the Pain Management Committee, which started in 2019, this is our first effort, and it's not going to be our last. And so we're not limited just to cannabinoids. We're interested in figuring out, are there ways that we can treat pain better? And so we're going to use this and look at this process and see if there's a way that we can improve this process, but continue to try to advance the science in the interest of players' health and safety.
Dr. Sills, always a pleasure. Dr. Hill, great chatting with you. Appreciate you guys, the insight and all that you're doing.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Appreciate your interest and your great work always.